She said it so casually, like an aunt might or a teacher you used to know. But her eyes didn't match the tone. I'd barely stepped through the doorway before she said it. "You've grown up well." Then her hand, warm, steady, reached up, brushed a strand of my hair from my forehead, and rested there a second too long. That's when everything inside me stopped pretending. The house smelled faintly of rain and something floral, maybe her perfume, maybe the soap she used. There were quiet sounds. A clock ticking, the soft hum of a fridge, her bracelets shifting as she moved. She wasn't dressed up, just a loose sweater and jeans. But she carried herself like someone who knew exactly what her presence did to a room. And I couldn't stop noticing her hands. She poured coffee for both of us, the kind of small kindness that meant more than it should have. Her fingers brushed mine when she handed me the cup, light but intentional, like a test neither of us acknowledged. "It's been, 10 years?" she said, leaning against the counter. 11, I replied. "You used to visit in the summers." She smiled, that slow, almost private kind of smile. "You remember." "I remember," I said, because I did. The way she used to laugh at things no one else noticed, how she made a house full of noise go quiet when she entered a room. Back then, I just thought she seemed older, mysterious in a way I couldn't name. Now, standing across from her, I realized she hadn't lost any of that. If anything, she'd grown into it. Her gaze flicked over me once, measured but soft. "You look different," she said, voice lowering a little on the last word. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not with the air between us so charged it felt like a third presence in the room. A drop of coffee slid down her cup. She wiped it with her thumb, then looked up and caught me watching. "Still quiet," she murmured. "You always were." "Still talk too much," I said, before realizing I'd used her own teasing tone from years ago. It made her laugh, quietly, genuinely. She turned, started walking toward the living room, motioning for me to follow. "Come on, sit. Tell me what you've been doing with yourself." I followed, watching the curve of her back as she moved. She had a kind of practiced grace, but there was also a hint of weariness, like she carried something she didn't talk about anymore. I sat on the edge of the couch. She sank into the armchair across from me, legs crossed, watching in that way people do when they're remembering and comparing all at once. "You're not a kid anymore," she said softly this time. The sentence hung there. Not a compliment, not a statement, but something she wasn't supposed to say out loud. I nodded once. "Neither are you." That made her laugh again. But not the same kind of laugh. This one came with a sigh at the end, like she wished I hadn't said it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the faint sound of rain against the windows. Then she stood, walked over, and without saying a word, reached out. Fingers tracing the line of my hair again, just like before. It wasn't an accident this time. I looked up at her and she didn't pull away. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me, like she was weighing something impossible. And then, just as the air between us broke, a sound came from the hallway. The front door clicked open. She stepped back fast, her hand falling to her side. "Stay here," she whispered. And then she was gone, leaving her perfume, her warmth, and a silence thick enough to make my pulse trip. The next afternoon, I told myself I wouldn't stop by. Then I found myself standing at her gate again, pretending I had a reason. The excuse was thin. I'd left my jacket. She smiled when she opened the door, the kind of smile that said she knew it wasn't about a jacket at all. "Come in," she said. "It's getting cold." Her voice was softer this time, tired maybe. I followed her inside, into that same quiet that seemed to belong to us. She handed me the jacket, but I didn't take it right away. Our fingers brushed, and she didn't pull hers back. "You're shivering," she said. "I walked," I answered. "Of course you did," she murmured, more to herself than to me. She went to make tea, her back turned, the rhythm of her movements slow, deliberate, like she was giving herself time to think. There were photos on the wall, a younger version of her, a man beside her in one of them. The same man wasn't in the more recent ones. I glanced over them until she came back with 2 mugs. "You're staring," she said, handing me one. "Just looking," I said. "You don't Live with anyone? Her eyes held mine a second too long. Not anymore. She took a sip, then looked out the window. It's quieter this way. I nodded, not trusting my voice. You? She asked. Girlfriend? Someone waiting on you? No, I said. No one. She smiled faintly. Then we're both bad at keeping company. The words hung there, warm and sad at the same time. When she sat on the couch beside me, she left a space between us. Small but deliberate. I felt the distance more than I would have if she'd sat closer. Her hair brushed my shoulder when she turned to reach for the remote. I caught the scent of her. Rain, soap, and something faintly sweet. She noticed me noticing. You used to follow me around when you were little, she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. I remember, I said. You never told me to stop. I should have. But you didn't. Her eyes flicked to mine, a flicker of something unguarded. No, she said quietly. I didn't. The movie started, but neither of us watched it. The silence grew heavier, like something we'd both been carrying had finally found a place to rest between us. Her hand was on the couch, close enough that my sleeve brushed her fingers. I didn't move. Neither did she. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. You remind me of him sometimes. Who? She hesitated. Someone I used to think I'd end up with, before things got complicated. I wanted to ask, but her eyes said not to. Instead, I said quietly, maybe that's why you keep looking at me like that. She let out a small laugh, the kind people use when they're afraid of what comes next. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because I might answer. We sat there, neither moving, the movie flickering blue light across her face. Then she shifted. Almost nothing, just her hand brushing mine, her thumb grazing my skin. Could have been an accident. It wasn't. For a second, neither of us breathed. And then she whispered, it's late. You should go. But when I stood, she didn't. Her eyes followed me to the door, soft, unreadable. And just before I stepped outside, she said, barely audible, come by tomorrow. I'll make dinner. It rained again that evening. A steady, slow kind of rain that made the streetlights blur. I almost didn't go, but her text came just before sunset. Dinner's still on? I typed yes before I could think better of it. When she opened the door, the smell hit first. Garlic, rosemary, something roasting in the oven. She had her hair pinned loosely, a few strands falling against her cheek. You made it, she said, like she hadn't been sure I would. I said I would. She smiled, soft but distracted. You say a lot of things. The table was set for two. Music played low in the background, old songs quiet and slow. We ate mostly in silence, talking around safe topics. Work, neighbors, weather. But every few sentences, she'd glance up, and the rest of the world would fall away. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, then set it face down. Someone important? I asked. No, she said quickly. Just someone who thinks I'm still who I was. The way she said it made something tighten in my chest. When the dishes were cleared, she poured wine and sank onto the couch. I stayed standing, unsure if I should. Sit, she said. Please. So I did. Close but not close enough. The silence this time wasn't empty. It hummed. She leaned back, fingers tracing the rim of her glass, eyes fixed on nothing. You ever wish you'd done things differently? She asked. All the time, I said. You? Her smile was faint, sad. Every day. She turned toward me then, her knee brushing mine. It should have been nothing, but my pulse jumped anyway. A knock suddenly hit the door. We both froze. She stood, quick, too quick, and smoothed her sweater like she'd been caught doing something wrong. It's probably your mother, she whispered, half joking, half afraid. My throat went dry. What if it is? Then you're just dropping something off, she said. You never came in. We stared at each other for one long beat, that kind of moment that stretches so thin it could break. Another knock. She crossed the room, cracked the door an inch, spoke in hushed tones. I caught pieces. Yes, fine, just tired. Tomorrow maybe. When she closed it, she stayed facing the door, shoulders tense. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded. Just complicated. And then she turned back toward me, and the look she gave wasn't cautious anymore. It was raw, unguarded. I stood without thinking, drawn closer by something I couldn't name. She didn't move away. Her hand lifted slightly, as if to stop me, but it hovered in the space between us, trembling. I shouldn't, she whispered. I know, but neither of us stepped back. For a moment, the rain outside sounded louder than our breathing. Then she exhaled, a small, broken sound, and turned away before anything could happen. Go, she said softly, before I forget why I shouldn't. I left, but she followed me to the doorway, and when I glanced back, she was still there, fingers against the frame, eyes caught between wanting and letting go. He hadn't planned to see her again that week, but she called just his name, no explanation, and he went. When she opened the door, he saw it in her eyes. She'd been thinking about the same thing he had. No pretense this time. No coffee cups between them. Just a quiet room and too much silence. You came fast, she said, voice softer than usual. I was close by. It was a lie, and they both knew it. She stepped aside to let him in. The air smelled faintly of paper and rain. Her desk was scattered with notes, her reading glasses set aside. She looked tired, but alive in a way he hadn't seen before. I've been thinking, she started. That's dangerous, he said, trying to smile. She almost laughed, but it caught somewhere in her throat. You shouldn't say things like that. Then stop looking at me like you want me to. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Only the smallest exhale, sharp and uncertain. She turned away, ran a hand through her hair, the gesture revealing the line of her neck. He watched her fingers tremble just slightly. You don't understand, she said quietly. I spent years trying not to blur lines. You were. I'm not anymore. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument could. She faced him again. You're too young to ruin something good for nothing certain. I'm not looking for certain, he said. Just honest. He took a step closer. She didn't move. He could see her breathing now, slow, deliberate, as if each inhale might change something. Don't, she whispered, but the word carried no force. He raised a hand, hesitated, then brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. Her eyes closed at the touch, not out of fear, but surrender. I shouldn't be here, he said. Yes, you should, she replied, barely above a whisper. Her hand came up then, resting against his chest. He could feel the warmth of her palm through his shirt, and it froze him, that simple human contact. They stood there, neither backing away. The distance between them collapsed into something fragile, breath to breath. Outside, thunder rolled, soft and low. Say it, he murmured. She shook her head. You already know. He did. Every look, every pause had said it for her. And still, he leaned in, close enough to feel her breath against his skin, close enough that one more heartbeat would have been too much. Her hand slid to his neck, not pulling him closer, not pushing him away. Then suddenly the doorbell rang. She froze. He stepped back. The moment shattered, the air between them trembling with what almost was. Her voice was unsteady when she spoke. Don't move, she said. Please, just stay right there. And she turned toward the door, leaving the room full of everything they hadn't said. The knock turned into a voice. Muffled. Familiar. He couldn't make out the words, but her expression told him she could. She opened the door just enough to speak through it. Yes, I'm fine. Just working late. Pause. No, no one's here. He felt that last sentence like a slap of cold air. When the door closed, she didn't turn right away. Her shoulders rose and fell once. A deep, shaky breath before she faced him. That was my editor, she said. But she was lying. He could tell. Who was it really? She didn't answer. Instead, she crossed to the window, keeping her back to him. Does it matter? It does if you're lying to me. That made her spin around. You don't get to ask that. Not when I don't even know what this is. He stepped closer. You know. She looked at him, then really looked, and for a moment he saw fear, not of him but of what she felt. It was my ex-husband, she admitted finally. He still has keys. He thinks I'm waiting for him to come back. The words landed heavy between them. Suddenly their quiet little world felt exposed, precarious. So what happens if he does? He asked. She almost smiled bitterly. Then everything I've tried to rebuild burns down. She brushed past him to the desk, gathering stray papers just to have something to do. Her sleeve grazed his arm, static sparking through the contact. He caught her wrist before she could move away. You can't keep pretending this doesn't exist. Her hand trembled in his. You think I don't feel it? Every time you walk in here, I forget what I promised myself I'd never do again. Then stop pretending, he said. His voice was low, rough. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something closer to exhaustion. You're too young to understand what losing costs. Then teach me, he whispered. That broke her stillness. She pulled free, pacing once across the room. You don't know what you're asking. He took a step forward. Maybe I do. She stopped, turned. If we cross this line, I can't go back to being your mentor. Or your friend. Maybe I don't want to go back. The air felt charged again, like before the thunder. She was close enough that he could see the pulse in her throat. I should tell him, she said suddenly. Tell him what? That I've moved on. That there's someone else. He stared at her. There isn't. Not really. Her gaze met his unsteady, brave. There could be. For a heartbeat, the room went silent except for the rain tapping the glass. She took one step closer, then another, until her breath warmed the space between them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Tomorrow, she said. Come back tomorrow. If I open the door, you'll know my answer. And she turned off the light, leaving him standing in the dark with nothing but the echo of what she'd just promised. He didn't sleep that night. Every sound, rain on the roof, a car passing, felt like it carried her name. By morning, he'd decided. If she opened the door, he wouldn't turn away this time. He stood outside her apartment, the world still wet from last night's storm. The hallway smelled of coffee and dust. His pulse drummed in his throat. He knocked once. A pause. Then the faint click of a lock. When the door opened, she looked different. Calmer, almost resolved. She wore a loose shirt, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back. The light behind her caught the small tremor in her hand as she held the frame. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You told me to. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I did, didn't I? He stepped inside. The air was warm, close. There were 2 cups on the table, one already poured. I didn't know if you'd stay, she said. I didn't come to leave. That silenced her. The weight of what hung between them filled the space. Weeks of holding back, of glances that lasted too long. I told him, she said finally. My ex. I told him it was over for good. He swallowed. Because of me? She hesitated, then nodded. Because I couldn't keep lying. Not to him. Not to myself. He took a small step forward. She didn't move. I don't know what happens after this, she whispered. Neither do I. They stood so close now that he could feel the warmth of her breath, hear the faint catch in it. Her eyes searched his, looking for reason, maybe permission. He lifted a hand, then stopped, inches from her face. If I touch you now, he said quietly, there's no going back. I know. Her voice broke on the last word, soft but sure. He brushed his fingers against her cheek. Not a claim, just contact. She leaned into it, eyes closing for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch forever. This isn't simple, she murmured. It never was. Her hand found his wrist, held it there, not pulling him closer, not letting him go. Their foreheads touched lightly, a fragile meeting point between fear and want. For a long moment, they just breathed, sharing the same uneven rhythm. I wanted to be brave, she said. And here you are. He smiled, small, unsteady. Then let's be brave together. She laughed once, softly, not from joy but relief. When she opened her eyes, something had changed. Not the tension, not the pull, those remained, but the fear had gone out of it. She stepped back half a pace, just enough to draw a line neither of them would cross tonight. "Stay," she said. "Just stay." He nodded. "I will." They sat, side by side, the world outside slowly clearing. No grand gesture, no need for one. Just the quiet certainty of two people finally seeing each other without the noise. Morning light stretched across the living room floor, pale and steady after the night's rain. She was already awake, sitting by the window with her mug, watching the city move slowly below. He stirred on the couch, the sound of her coffee spoon against the cup pulling him back to the moment. The small, impossible truth that he was still here. "Morning," he said quietly. She turned, a tired smile tugging at her mouth. "You stayed. I told you I would." For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was easy, lived in. She crossed the room, barefoot, the hem of her shirt brushing her thighs. She stopped beside him, hesitating like she wasn't sure if the night had changed everything or nothing at all. "You didn't sleep much," she said. "Didn't want to," he replied. "Didn't want to miss this." That made her laugh, low and real. She sank down beside him, close enough that their knees touched. He reached for her hand without thinking, and she let him. Their fingers fit naturally, palms warm against each other. "I used to think this would ruin us," she said after a while. "That wanting something like this meant I was lost. And now it just feels honest." He nodded. "It does." She leaned her head against his shoulder, the movement small but final. He could feel her relax, the tension that had lived in her body for weeks dissolving into something softer. "People will talk," she murmured. "They always do. I'm older." "I noticed," he said, smiling. That earned him a quiet nudge with her elbow, then silence again, the kind that doesn't need filling. After a while, she tilted her face up to look at him. "You sure about this? About me?" He met her gaze. "I've never been more sure of anything." Something in her expression shifted, a mix of disbelief and relief. She exhaled slowly, then reached up to brush a stray lock of hair from his forehead, the same way she'd done that very first day. Only this time she didn't pull away. Her thumb lingered against his skin, tracing slow, absent circles near his temple. He leaned into the touch, eyes half closed. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "So, what happens now?" She smiled. "We stop pretending we don't already know." The morning light caught her face just then. Soft, unguarded, beautiful in its imperfection. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. A quiet promise rather than a declaration. She smiled again, smaller, warmer, then rested her forehead against his, their breaths mingling in the space between them. No rush, no drama, just stillness. Two people finally letting themselves be seen. Outside, the city woke, cars moving, life resuming. Inside, they stayed where they were, quiet, steady, together. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?